Well, as you can see, I have an overabundance of fence picket cutoffs from projects like that out there. So we have a 42-inch tall bar, we have 72-inch pickets, and so that gives us lots of scraps. And I have all kinds of projects on utilizing these scraps if you haven't already checked out the channel. Now what we're going to do today is something I've not yet built. I've never built this project, haven't done any drawings for this project. So we're just going to kind of fly by the seat of our pants a little bit here. But what we're going to be building are a wheelbarrow planter. Had a customer who's ordered this, so I need to get these built today, and I didn't really want to take the time to make a drawing and all that. I kind of have it in my head about what we're going to do, so we're just going to kind of wing it here. So these here are 11 inches, and we're going to rip these down on the table saw to give us approximately 1.5 inches wide. So we're gonna need a bunch of those. We actually need 8, if my calculations are correct, we're gonna need 8 11-inch pieces per wheelbarrow. I have 2 to make. And so I've got 2 stacks here. I've got 4 pieces that are 18, and I've got 4 pieces that are 14. And so I've got those 2 stacks. And this is gonna make up the ends and sides of our wheelbarrow. And then over here, I've got a stack of 3 that are 18 inches long, and those are gonna be for the bottom of our wheelbarrow. And now these are gonna have to be ripped. We can't use the full width, so we're gonna rip these in the table saw, but because I don't know the exact dimension, what the width should be just yet, I haven't calculated that. I can't tell you exactly what that dimension is yet, but I will when we get there. So those all are going to have to be ripped to a certain width. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and figure out what that width is, and then I'm going to go ahead and rip all these to 1.5 inches, and then we'll come back and we'll show you how we're going to assemble this thing. So I have all of my 1.5 inch ripped pieces, 11 inches long, and then these I ripped to 4.5 inches wide. I'll explain that when we put this together, why I went with that particular dimension. Of course, these are 18 inches long. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to put together our end caps of our wheelbarrows. So we're going to start with these pieces here. Let me gather some additional tools, and I'll show you how those go together. So I've got one of my ends started here, and this is just how I've always done it. So we have 4 11-inch pieces, and of course they're 1.5 inches wide, so this distance should be 14. Mine actually comes out to 13 7/8. So what I did is I took my 14-inch pieces and I just whacked 1/4 inch off. So so what I would do is go ahead and make your frame, see how wide it is, and maybe you have to trim that a little bit. So this is now 13 3/4 instead of 14, but it's not really that big a deal. All right, and then I'm using the Type Bond 3, which is rated for outdoor use. So we're just going to put a little bit of glue here, and then notice how I've kind of have these put together with these staples. So I'm using my Ryobi staple gun. Really very handy tool to have, not expensive at all. Right now I think they've got it on sale for $30. So it's really cheap. It takes the T50 staples, and I'm using 3/8 staples for this particular example. So I have 3/8 and 1/2 inch are my 2 most common sizes. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of glue on here, and then what we're going to do, of course, is we're going to use our staple gun and just staple these on here. And it's going to take 2 of them because these are 5.5 inches wide, and then our frame is 11 inches, so that should work out perfectly. So I'll go ahead and get that done, and then I'll show you what that looks like. Not much to see here, but that is our end cap. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like. So what I will do is go and get me a wet rag and clean up this any glue squeeze out I see. I'll go ahead and get that cleaned up real quick. Now, one thing I do want to talk about is the staples. So I'm using 1-inch staples because this is 5/8 material times 2. So we're 1.25 inch material thickness. So 1-inch staples. Again, I did use the waterproof glue. The glue really should do the job of holding it together once it dries. So I'm not going to put screws in here. We do have some 1-inch screws here. You can see these are just a 1-inch deck screw that sometimes I will use in addition to the staples, but in this particular case I'm not going to. I don't think it's necessary because it's really just a decorative thing. But the one thing I do want to point out is my staple location. So you could see here on the 11-inch side, we've got 3 staples per board, but then going the other direction, see where these two come together? I have a staple right there. So a staple here, staple right next to it. So these 2 boards are held together. And you see another one here. So that's just something just to kind of point that out. And really, I should have one right here in the middle too. And I don't. So there we go. So 3 across there, really, yes, 3 across this side, and then that one and that one kind of going this direction. But you kind of get the idea. So we need 4 of those. So we're gonna go ahead and put together 4 of them. Okay, so our next step then is to put the 2 ends together with the bottoms. Now this was my choice. You may choose to do something different. Remember I said these were 4.5 inches wide, 14 inches overall, right? So that leaves us this little gap here in the middle. And again, this was by design. Now these planters are really more or less designed for some type of container to sit inside this box, not actually plant directly in this box. But the reason I did leave that little slit is just on the off chance that somebody wants to plant in the box itself. That will allow the drainage that you would want. Okay, so at any rate, in case you haven't figured it out yet, what are we making here? Yes, we're going to make wheelbarrows, but really what we're making is a wood crate. This is the same way we would typically build a crate. Now, usually with our crates, we don't use the full thickness of our fence picket. We would rip it in 2, but in this case, I wanted it to be a little bit more beefy. So, and this is all free wood off the bar. So I just decided to go ahead and use the full fence picket thickness because this is going to have to hold a little bit of weight. It's not a huge deal for our bottom because we have our wheelbarrow arms that are going to go on here, and that will also support this bottom very well as well. So I've ran 3 1.25 inch staples. Again, we're using that waterproof wood glue. You can see it squeezed out here a little bit, so we're going to get that cleaned up. 3 staples on both ends. And you want to make sure I put these together that this side is facing out. That's how I like it anyhow. And now we just have to put together our 2 sides. So I'll go ahead and get that done. So again, we used a little bit of the waterproof glue. We have 3 1.25 inch staples there. Once that glue sets, this should be a pretty nice rock solid box. So a lot of times, just as a little side note here, a lot of times what I like to do is I like to use some nails. So if I'm making a crate, rather than use an ugly screw, I'll go and buy some box nails and utilize those just because I think they look nicer than a big ugly screw. But that's what the box looks like. So we have this little gap here in the middle. You could put that right there tight and not have that gap, and then you just have a little of your crate sticking out there. So sometimes I'll do it that way. In this particular case, I don't think it really matters. I think that crate will be just fine. Again, I think you would be using some type of container that you just set in the wheelbarrow rather than plant in it. But if I knew the customer was going to plant in it, then I may not have this this gap here, so they would hold the dirt in. But at any rate, so that's one. Now I got to make another one, and then we'll talk about and figure out what we're going to do for the arms of our wheelbarrow. Okay, so that is our finished crate. Now, one thing, a couple points I wanted to make about is these are nice for the handles. So like if you're making crates, those are nice to utilize for handles. This is kind of the standard configuration I would use for record boxes. If I was doing record boxes, normally I would only do the record box 13.5 inches wide, though, if you want to sell those. The height is fine the way it is because the record will stick out. Records are roughly 13 by 13. So the record will stick out a little bit so you can see the title. So the depth is good for record boxes. The other thing I wanted to point out too, if you have the capability, is not have this gap here. And because this is meant as a decoration for the yard, you might showcase one with the house numbers on it or something like that as an upgrade. So for extra $10, you could put their house numbers on it if they have it out in the front yard or something. And that's just another, or their name or whatever, you know, like for a wedding gift or something, you know, offer some type of personalization. Just give them that option as a potential upgrade for what you're doing. So you can see here, I rounded it over just a little bit with 60 grit paper, sandpaper, all the way around just to kind of clean up the box a little bit. And now we'll go ahead and figure out what we're going to do for the arms. Now I'm going to be using pressure treated material, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rip a 2x4 in half, which will give us roughly 1.75 inch handles. So I think that's what we're going to do, but I got to figure out the length. I got to figure out how big a wheel and things like that. So I'll get that figured out, and then I'll show you what we ultimately did. So I did cheat and go to the computer and get this all figured out because there are a lot of angles and things that needed some figuring out. So I made our arms for our wheelbarrow 34 inches long. Ignore what the computer says. We're not that precise. So our next thing that we need to add to these is we need a little bit of an angle here. So we're going to come in 3/4 of an inch, and then we're going to come back this 4 1/4, and then we're going to add that angle. And to do that, this little tool right here, it's worth its weight in gold. I just like to use it when I'm making small dimensions and making them precise. This little tool, you set the ruler, and Bob's your uncle. We can lay that out. So this is the Craig Multi-Mark. It's a few dollars. Like I said, I really like using it for this type of work. So rather than give you that angle, we give you the 2 dimensions, and whatever it is, okay? And then this here, I didn't put it here, and I should have. I don't know why I didn't. That's 10 degrees though. I just know that is. So we need a piece that is 1.75 inches wide, 7 inches long with a 10-degree. And then this piece here, I did 1.5 inches wide. You could do 1.75 inches if you wanted. 11 7/8, and then we have a 16 degree miter and a 64-degree miter. Okay, and what I might do is I might cheat, go back to the computer and do the same thing here. Rather than give you this crazy angle, I might go back and get that dimension for you. I do want to take the opportunity though to show you something on the miter saw of how to cut these obtuse angles. An obtuse angle is anything greater than 45 degrees. So if you don't know how to do that on your miter saw, I'll show you real quick how to do it. So with that said, let me go ahead and get this all marked up, get these angles cut, get these other pieces cut up, and I'll show you how this thing goes together. Now, because I like to make things unnecessarily difficult, I decided to go ahead and just shape the ends of my arms here a little bit. Now, I'm not going to go into super detail, but essentially what I did is I just took the corners off in my table saw up 4.5 inches, and just took the corners off at 45-degree angle, and then busted those off, and then just kind of blended with my sander so the ends kind of have like a round handle, you know, like a real wheelbarrow would. Totally unnecessary, but I just thought it would add a little bit extra detail. Might be kind of fun. Okay, so that's taken care of. So now what I need to do is go ahead, look at my sheet here. I need to make my leg, and then I need to make this support piece for my leg now that I have my arms made, and then I have all the pertinent dimensions of where that leg is placed and my support piece is placed to go ahead and put those two leg assemblies together. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done, and then we'll talk some more. Now this is going to be one of those things, do as I say, don't do as I do. Okay, so we need this angle to be 64 degrees. This says 11 7/8. I made my piece 12 inches. Okay, and so how do we get 64 degrees when our miter saw will only do a 45-degree miter? Well, what I did here is I just took a piece of scrap fence picket and cut a 45-degree miter on it. You could cut a 30-degree. You could cut a 15-degree. You could cut a 22-degree. That angle really is not that pertinent, but we need 64. So what we did is we have 45, and then we have set our miter saw to 19. 19 and 45 gives us 64. So what we're doing is we're cutting a 19-degree angle, but we've kicked our board out 45 degrees, and that's ultimately going to end us with a 64-degree angle. Now, it's a little bit dangerous. It's not super precise, etc., but you can see when we come down with our saw, you can see we're going to get that sharper angle. So we need to line up this corner with our saw blade when we come down, so we get that nice 64-degree miter. We could use a 2x4, 2x6, whatever we wanted. I just use fence picket because I got it everywhere, like literally everywhere. So at any rate, that's in a nutshell how to do it. Like I say, it can be dangerous. Watch your fingers, but that's how you get that sharp angle. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get that cut and move on. Well, I'm pleasantly surprised because it looks like it's going to work out. So far, so good. So what I did is I came back. Let me look at my drawing, show you my drawing. So, other drawing. Computer says come in 8 5/8 to that point right there. So I came from the outside of my handle and marked 8 5/8, and this is where my 7-inch piece with a 10-degree miter goes. And so we're going to pre-drill and screw one 3.5-inch screw going this direction. And I kind of have this rule of thumb that if we're able to use a 3.5-inch screw, we always use a 3.5-inch screw. Okay, that's just rule of thumb. So, and then it says from the bottom up 1.5 inches, we would run a 3.5-inch screw this way. And now here we cannot use a 3.5-inch screw. So I would probably use 1 5/8 maybe. And right here at the tip into this one here. Okay, I might see if a 2.5-inch screw. I have 2.5 and 1 5/8, so I'm probably going to have to use 1 5/8 for this one. Or I might actually be able to go down. That's what I'll do. I'll come down from this direction and catch that, and then I could use probably a 3.5. That's what I'll do. I'll do that. So that looks like that's going to work out pretty well. And then again, my 16-degree angle is pretty close. 64-degree angle is pretty close. So I'm pretty happy with that. So that will work. And then of course we have to do 2 assemblies like that. So just make sure when you're putting these pieces on that your bevel here is facing up. So that when we stand this up, everything will be the way it's supposed to be. Okay, so I'll go ahead and put those together, and I'll come back to you. Are you seeing it coming together? So now we have a nice robust leg setup. So now all we have to do is take care of the wheel. And we're using an 8-inch round. Now you see my CNC in there. Normally I would do that on the CNC machine, but because most of you probably don't have a CNC machine, we're gonna go ahead and just do it the old school way, and I'll show you how that goes. So the first thing I need to do is I need to put some boards together that is ultimately going to be my wheel. Now, previously I said something about possibly making the wheel move. In this particular case, I'm not able to do that because I don't have the materials right here on hand to do that. I could not find my dowel rod and the other things that I would need, so we're not going to do that. We're just going to make a fixed wheel. It's a planter. It's not really meant to be used as a wheelbarrow, so it's not going to matter anyhow. So I'm going to go ahead and put a couple boards together, and then we'll talk about exactly what we're doing and how we're going to make our wheels. Okay, so this is ultimately going to become our wheel. So all I did is I have some fence picket material here. Now yours isn't going to look exactly like this because I just happen to have these boards sitting here. But it'll be very similar. So all we're going to do is we're going to cut some fence picket down to 9 inches, and then we're going to kind of crisscross them the opposite way. So see how these on the bottom are going this direction and these on top are going this way. I've got some 1-inch staples holding this together. We're going to go to the computer and print out an 8-inch circle, cut it out of paper, use that as our template, and that's going to become our wheel. We'll refine it a bit with our sander and round it off a little bit. Now, if we were going to do a lot of these, like I said, normally I would put this together just like it is, stick it in my CNC machine, and have the CNC. I would make sure my staples are not where my bit would pass, and I would just go ahead and cut this out on the CNC machine. That would be one way to do that, if you had a CNC machine. Now, if you don't have a CNC machine, then what we could do is we could have a template made. We could make the template for you, or you could make a template, and then you could use that template in your router with a template bit on your router table. That would be another way to make perfect circles quickly. In this case, it doesn't have to be perfect, so it's not that big a deal. If you just want to do old school, cut it out with a jigsaw as best you can, clean it up with your sander, and good enough, right? So let me go ahead and get that done, and then we'll move on. One thing about it I didn't do in this particular case, and now I'm kind of wishing I would have, is I didn't use any wood glue. So this is strictly put together with staples. So probably what I'll do is I'll put staples on both sides and have to call that a day, because I forgot my wood glue. But like I said, it's not a huge deal, but definitely use wood glue when you're putting these together like that. Okay, so let me go ahead and get my 8-inch circle. We'll get it cut out, and I'll show you what the finished product looks like. So there you go. There's my 8-inch circle. I just kind of scratched all the way around that with my carpenter's pencil. Just go all the way around it. Give me a rough outline, and I'll go ahead and cut that out with my jigsaw. So there you go. That's the rough cut. So we'll clean that up with our orbital sander, and we'll have ourselves a wheel. So I'll get that done and show you what that looks like. That really took no time at all, and you could see, you know, it's a round disc. It's good enough for what we're doing. So that's it. That's it for that. So now we just need to attach our legs to this, and then we'll attach our box to the legs, and we'll have one completed wheelbarrow planter. So let me go ahead and show you how we're going to do that. All right, let me just show you what I did. I don't know if I recommend it or not, but it's probably okay. So what I did was I just literally eyeballed it. Okay, so I've got some of green outdoor wood glue there, and then I've got 2 1.25" staples holding this to the wheel for right now. But we are going to run one 3.5" screw through our wheel into the other side, and that should give us plenty of support to hold the wheel to our legs here. And so I put one on, and if you look here, that bevel that we made previously, that flat area is essentially lined up with the outside of our wheel. That's just what looked right to me. So, and then you can kind of see, if you look down, I just kind of lined the other one up to the first one, basically, is what I did. So I just eyeballed it. I thought that would just be the simplest way to go about it. So now I'm going to run one 3.5" screw through all of this. Through this one, through this, and through that, and we should be good to go. So one 3.5" screw went through everything, and then I did decide to go ahead and put a 2.5" screw through everything as well. So now we can kind of set this up, get a look at it here, starting to come together. Now really the only thing that's left to do is to mount our box, and we will have our little planter. Well, that's basically it. Couple of important dimensions. We came back from the front edge back to 7 3/4 to mount our box. And then on the back side here, what I did is just eyeballed this distance and this distance. And then we used 2.5" screws all along the arm there, 3 there, and then 3 on this side as well. Pretty simple stuff. And that completes our wheelbarrow planter. So I'll go ahead and get it all staged up, and I'll give you one final look. So there she is, all staged up, looking proper. Of course, these look great if you get them all stained up, painted, whatever. But you get it staged up like this, I guarantee you're going to sell a bunch of these. So I hope you like this one. I hope you try it out. Once you've built these a few times, you can knock these together real quick, and should have no problem getting these sold. Let's talk about what I sell it for. I sell these for $59 is what I post them for, and they sell pretty good at that price point. We could still make money, sell them at 45 or 50 if you want to lower your price a little bit. Because again, most all of this is made with scrap material, so we don't really have to buy material to build this. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and thanks for watching.